Dr. Henry, our Register Sir, Dr. Andoni-san, fathers, sisters, HODs, and members of the faculty. Very good afternoon. And indeed, I'm very happy to welcome you all to this second FDP program in this academic year, 2021 and 2022. Now, as we start our session, usually we'll always start with a prayer, invoking the Lord, then we'll proceed the next thing. So I request Father Savary to lead us in prayer. Thank you, Father, for leading us in prayer. And I am duty bound to welcome all of you who are present virtually for this faculty development program, enhancing potential and improving performance. So why we have to actually go for this FDP? Anyone who stops learning is old, whether it is 20, 30, 40 or 80. So we have to keep learning daily basis. The more you read and listen, the more things you will know. So the ongoing learning not only enhances our social inclusion, active citizenship, but is a personal development, also self-sustainability. Learning can be seen as something that takes place on ongoing basis from our daily interactions with oneself, others, and the world around us. So keeping this in mind, we really want to have regular FDP that may enhance the potential of our faculty in the teaching learning process. So that is why we focus more on this FDP like this. So while looking for a person who would fit for addressing our faculty, increasing the capability and development, we got Dr. J. Henry Rosario, a PhD, who has got a very good experience in this teaching learning process. So on behalf of the management, HODs, members of the faculty, and all of us gathered virtually, I welcome you, sir. And next, I would like to welcome our register, HODs, members of the faculty, fathers, sisters, all of you. This is the time to learn. Request all of you to participate fully, learn, and try to execute in your career. With this, once again, I welcome all of you to partake in this FDP. And now, to introduce the program and give the inaugural address, I request our register, Dr. Andoni-san, to address the gathering virtually.
Thank you, sister. Honorable Vice Chancellor, respected Controller of Examinations, dear Reverend Fathers, Reverend Sisters, respected resource person of this day, Dr. Henry Rosario, Director Exodus, respected Dean Faculty Affairs, respected HODs, esteemed faculty members, good afternoon. It gives me immense pleasure to inaugurate this FDP on enhancing potentials and improving performance. We are really very fortunate to have Dr. Henry Rosario, a well-known and an eminent speaker in the field of leadership, business administration, and rural development. I'm very sure that the session will be more vibrant and thought-provoking. I take this opportunity to thank Sir for having accepted our request and for delivering this wonderful session to the faculty members. Dear faculty members, I sincerely thank each one of you for supporting during the time of troubles. That's the pandemic COVID-19. Now we are starting the academic year. I would like to quote the very famous quote. The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires. So you all are the great teachers. You have the responsibility of guiding, motivating, inspiring our students by your radiation of purity and radiation of knowledge. If we ask any successful person in this world, definitely they will refer few teachers of their schooling or higher education. So we also have the responsibility of guiding, motivating, empowering the students. I hope this is a wonderful opportunity. Let us utilize this opportunity to get ignited and transform the same to the students community of our renowned St. Joseph University. I wishing you all success. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your encouraging words. And now I request Sister Thynes, the Deputy Registrar, to introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Sister, for this opportunity. Am I audible to everybody?
You're audible.
Audible.
Yes, sister.
Audible.
Once again, good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sister.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Anthony Sen, the Registrar, Dean of Academic, Dean of Administration, and my dear staff members. I'm very much delighted to introduce Dr. J. Henry Rosario, MSW PhD, who has voluntarily, with this busy schedule, he is here with us virtually to help us and to motivate us. Dr. J. Henry Rosario has worked as an associate professor in social work in the postgraduate and research department of social work at Sacred Heart College, Tirupur, which is in Tamil Nadu, from 1918 to 88 to 2017. He has served the college as the additional vice principal and the department as its head before retiring. He obtained his PhD in social work from Madras School of Social Work in 2002 and secured gold medal for his MSW in Loyola College, Chennai in 1982. His contribution towards research, consultancy, and policy contribution. He has undertaken 16 major research studies and consultancy services for government, corporates, and international and national NGOs like UGC, Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, DB Tech, Child Fund India, ELGI Welfare Trust, and Restless Development. He was also the member of the drafting committee mandated to draft youth policy of the state government of India, Tamil Nadu in 2013 and government of Karnataka in 2012. He has also got a large exposure in development sector also. He took leave from academic career from 2006 to 2010 and worked in Restless Development and international NGO that works in 8 countries in Africa and Asia. He worked in the capacity of Regional Director of South Asia and Line Managed Country Programs in India and Nepal on the strategic direction, program quality, fundraising, operations in HR and finance management. His exposure in the international level, he has traveled abroad to Philippines, France, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Sierra Leone, Thailand, and USA for higher studies and work-related assignments. At present, he is the founder, director of Exodus Research and Development Private Limited. The organization offers consultancy services in organizational development with specific thrust on corporate training and executive coaching. He has taken up assignments with 35 companies, which includes L&T Construction, L&T Hydrocarbon Engineering, Hyundai Motor India, MRF, Ashok Leyland, TTK Prestige, Rane Madras, Sterlite Copper, Titan Company, Shafrar India, Loop India, and Techno Automotive. Dear sir, we are very much glad to have you with a large and good number of experience. Your experience will surely help our staff members and all of us. For your information, our university is very young and our staff members are very young, energetic, and they are very much interested in learning by your experience. You are welcome, sir. The floor over to you.
Okay. First of all, big thanks to St. Joseph University, to the Vice Chancellor, to the Registrar, to the Deputy Registrar who introduced me, and the Dean, Admin, Sister Arakumari, who was in touch with me, and all the faculty members, almost more than 50 who are assembled here. I think I'll be going into the topic. I have divided the topic into two themes basically. The first theme is enhancing our potential. I have taken only two areas for that to talk about. One is building trust. The other one is managing time. These two are very important skills or competencies for any faculty member to really go up in the career. I think when I talk about these competencies, I may take 20 minutes and then we shall have some 10 minutes interaction. And for example, if I start talking about building trust for 20 minutes, I think we can have a discussion for 10 minutes. And if I talk about managing time as a skill, then we can have again another 10 minutes of interaction. Then I'll be talking about the next theme of the session, which is if we enhance our potential, then we need to improve our performance. Okay. Improving our performance, I thought in three areas, but that will be very, very brief because this will take more time. One in the area of teaching and learning, because innovations are a must in teaching. So enhancing our potential, the theme is on two. One is how to build the trust and how to manage time. What do we mean by building trust? Building trust is, as I have put that on the left side of the PPT, we need to trust others. At the same time, we need to be trustworthy also. Okay, sometimes we make a lot of promises to students, and the students know us very well. Some faculty will fulfill the promise. Someone will say, sorry, I'm sorry, okay. Similarly, we make assurances to faculty members, our colleagues, or even to the management, and then we say sorry. I mean, once and twice, that's okay. But if that becomes a regular feature of our personality, others are not able to trust us. That means we are not trustworthy. So, building trust has got two dimensions. One is we need to trust others. That is a big risk, actually. I'm not saying just like that. I have worked for 30 years in an academic institution. I started my career as a in lecturer grade and then retired as an associate professor and vice principal and heads of two departments, Department of Social Work and Department of Counseling Psychology. And I held the position of Internal Quality Assurance Cell member for 7 years. I was the steering committee coordinator. The reason why I am saying this is, I had to trust the management, and I was trustworthy to the management also. This is very important. Like I was trusting my own students, and I was trustworthy to my students. This is the theme of this particular session. How we can do it, we are going to see. This is a equation, very interesting. If you want, you can take a screenshot or a photo. Okay, this is by Harvard University. Professor Green and two of his colleagues came out with a research paper or an article on trust equation. And I liked it, and I have presented it to many corporates also, and they too have liked it. That's why I thought of sharing it with you. How can we become trustworthy to the students, to the colleagues, maybe to the HOD or to the management? And why to restrict only to our professional setting? How can I become trustworthy to my husband or wife or my children or my in-laws or my neighbors? So this is the theme. And Professor Green and two of his colleagues, they have published this paper in the Trusted Advisor. They give an equation. What is that? T is equal to C plus R plus I divided by S.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you. This equation, as you are able to see, it talks about C plus R plus I divided by S. And C stands for credibility, R stands for reliability, and I stands for intimacy. And what we actually, these three people tell you, no, if we want to be trustworthy, if others have to trust us, imagine students have to trust us, our other faculty members have to trust us, our management has to trust us, maybe our family spouses have to trust us, or whatever maybe, no. They say we must have credibility. C. We must be reliable. R. And we must have good relationship with others. I. Intimacy. But then what is yes? We should not be too selfish. I'm not using the word selfish, just to clarify, use the word, but the word used by Professor Green is self-orientation. Okay, that means too much of importance on self-growth and those type of things. Okay, good. Now let me go to the next slide so that you will understand what do I mean by credibility. Credibility is assessed by what you say and how believable you are to others. Okay, credibility is measured by your speech. I'll be there. Are you there? And people can, when you say, I'll be there. When you say, I will send the mail in half an hour. When you say, I will meet you there. How credible are you in what you say? And how believable are you? Okay, some people will do anything to fulfill what they promised actually. Some people will say, okay, yeah, what to do? That type of thing. So this is what we mean by credibility. I have given an example, for example. Do you say the same thing in front of others, what you speak behind their back? This is a very important point. You say, you tell your one colleague, no, you are really good, yeah? You are publishing, something like that. Behind the back, you say, no, that guy is a very selfish guy. He never teaches. He is only bothered about publishing papers. And imagine the other person comes to know, you have lost your credibility. People won't trust you. Why? You say one thing in front and you say one thing at the back. Management calls for a staff meeting and says, what is your suggestion? You never open your mouth. Why? If I say something, then they will note it down. Then that will be a problem for me. Let me keep quiet. Yeah, what is that? But then you go and talk behind the back. Management doesn't trust you. At least I have been working with the management for 30 years. And I have been always very, I mean, what I want to say, I say, but I say politely, but very firmly. Okay. To put it in the reverse way, I say it politely, but very firmly or politely. That's all. But I say it. Okay, this is what probably your colleagues will expect from you, your management will expect from you, your students will expect from you. For example, if the class is very not academically interested, and some credible teachers will say, I'm disappointed, I'm not happy with your behavior. Whereas some teachers will say, no, you are good, you are good. And behind the back, they'll say, this is the worst batch I have come across. And people will find you out soon. It happens in families, between husband and wife. You can relate actually. This is what is meant by credibility. What you say and how believable you are. Do you say the same thing in front of others, what you speak behind their back? I think I don't need to explain more than that. This is very self-explanatory. Okay. What is the next one? C plus R. R stands for reliability. Reliability is assessed by what you do on your words or assurances and how dependable are you. Okay, you said I'll be there. Were you there? You said I will send. Did you send? You said I will organize. Did you organize? This is what very simple. Whether it is with the students, I will give you the assignment topics. I will give you the papers corrected. Some teachers, you know what they happen? They conduct the test, but they never give the papers till semester exam. When semester exam is going to come, when internal assessment marks are to be entered, then only they correct and give the assignments and papers. What is the use? What is the purpose of having an internal assessment? An internal assessment purpose is not to divide the marks. It is for a student to come to know how much he is progressing in learning. And then he gets to know one thing by marks you give. So if you give it within a week or 10 days after the test or the assignment, then probably they think that some students, not all, I mean, some students are very definitely serious. So they will try to improve. But if you say, I will give next week, I will give following week, and then you are not giving, they realize that you are not a reliable person. Okay. Same way with the management, same way with your colleagues also. Okay. I'll go to the next one. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So the equation talks about the credibility, reliability, and intimacy. I think this is very important. Some teachers are very good in that. You know that I have 30 years of experience. I have seen some teachers are not PhDs, but they are loved and liked by students very much. You know why? Of course, I encourage all of you to do PhD, but that alone is not the thing. Some people cut across the barriers of teacher, student, and all that. They're one with the students. Students remember, I have realized that students remember you maybe after 20, 30 years, not for your academic brilliance and intelligence, because by the time they'll be also more intelligent than you. They may be deputy collector, or a corporate CEO in a company, something like that. They'll be 1,000 times better than your position. They'll be more intelligent, they'll be more competent, they'll be more talented after 20, 30 years. But if they remember you, they may not remember you for your competence. Yeah? They will remember you for your relationship. Please take this point. And if you are a little bit of a reserved type, I just come, teach and go. I think that is not right for a teaching profession. Since the deputy registrar said that a lot of people are young, and registrar also talk to me. I'm just trying to tell you, this is the right orientation. Try to develop intimacy. Here, intimacy means relationship with the students, with your colleagues. It's not a one-man show. It's a departmental teamwork, and with the management. Okay, we may have difference of opinion with the management, always express and address, but then that should not be like, grudges, staying away. That is not going to help neither you nor the university. Okay, absolutely we will have differences. If you don't have differences, then you are something like a buttering type of person. You are not actually good for the institution actually. If you have different opinions, you have to express politely but firmly. But at the same time, that has nothing to do with the relationship. Okay, that is separate. That is separate. Just because some certain things are not going as per our plan doesn't mean that we should not relate with others. That is different and this is different. I think this is what Professor Green means by get the trust of students, colleagues, and the management. You need to be credible, you need to be reliable, and you need to have interpersonal skills, which they call it as intimacy. Now, even though if you have very good score in this, imagine out of 10, you have 8 in C, 8 in R, 8 in I. That means 24. But the trust equation says C plus R plus I is divided by this self-orientation. Okay, what is self-orientation? It is assessed by how much undue focus. See, I'm not using the word focus. I'm using the word undue focus. Over focus you give to your personal and professional growth over others. You are not bothered about others. If someone says, can we exchange subjects? You say, no. Why should I? No, I want to learn something. No, I cannot. Why you say that, because it is easy for you. You have been teaching that subject for 3-4 years. And then going and taking another new subject is going to be very challenging, extra workload. No. But what about that young faculty member who wants to learn? I don't care about that. Why? It is I trouble, okay? Not E-Y-E-I. It is capital I. That is why, though Professor Green uses the word self-orientation, I use the word selfishness because it is a word we all understand. How many people are branded like that in our family, first of all? Maybe in our in-laws level, groups, neighbors, relatives, friends, that guy is selfish. What do they mean by that? They simply say we are more self-oriented. That means we look into our benefits, our advantages, our compared to others. So, if imagine, I'm coming back to the point, you have a high score, you are a very credible person. You have 8 score out of it. You are a very reliable person. You get 8 out of 10. You are having very good relationship. You also get 8 out of 10. 8 plus 8 is 24. But if your self-orientation is also 8, 24 divided by 8, that's all. That is the score you get. You get less than 5. That means what? You are not going to be trustworthy because people see you as a competitor. People see you as a one-man army. People see you as an individual or a loner who is interested only in his own career growth. He never cares. No, imagine, let's say, no, we are going to have a conference. Can you come and do? No, what is my position? Will I be on the stage? Will you give me the MC? Sorry, that has been given. Okay, then maybe next time I will come. Why? I'm not in the limelight. I'm not given importance. See, this is what is called self-orientation. And if you are going to have this too much, I think you will be less trustworthy in anywhere you are. I'm talking about primarily the academic setup, but the same thing applies in family also. Now, how to get out of it? Okay, I'm just giving 2 or 3 points. That's all. With that, we are going for an interaction. Okay. Treat people fairly without bias. Example, students, we have the weakness of favoritism. Some students like us, so we like them more. It is a human nature, but I have seen teachers who rise above that. Though they like someone, when it comes to correcting papers, that will not come into the picture. Just because I know someone, like someone, just because someone likes me, that is different. That is interpersonal. But when I am correcting the assignment, when I am giving an exemption, when I am correcting a test paper or an exam paper, those things never come. Okay. If you can try that, that is going to help you. Okay. Number 2, whenever you make decisions in the class or in a staff meeting, shall we do this thing? Someone is going to do this. Shall we do? Someone is now sick. So we are thinking of collecting money. Don't try to take a decision. Some people are like that. They think what they are doing is good, but they never involve others. And then they will say, no one is supporting me. I have so many ideas, but no one. Who will? Who will? Because you think that what you think is right and you decide for the betterment of others. Intention is good, but the procedure is bad. Instead, it is good. This is a situation you can do. Even in a decision, keep it in your heart and put the question and let others say, let students say on level, faculty members say on their level, or management say from their level. Then you get as if you are trying to take all their ideas, and it is idea. When you present it, the idea as their idea, I think they take it well and they support in execution also. Poor executor is purely because they involve people, consult people at the decision making. Own ideas. Why should I? I think that is very common and nothing wrong with them. Better, I think we can change ourselves. Modeling your behavior. I have just given an example, your own punctuality. Okay, are you punctual? If you are not punctual, how do you expect others to be punctual? Do you prepare for your class? During my 30 years of my teaching career, I have seen so many professors, the same old 10-year, 15-year notes. At least in your case, the university itself is only 4 years old. But sometimes some experienced faculty could have joined from outside who are 50 years or 45 years. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you, update every year. Don't talk about if you're teaching the same subject, what you said last year, in terms of examples, in terms of whatever maybe, things are evolving and changing so fast. And if this is what is called a modeling. So when you do that, you can demand the same excellence from students. You can tell them, come prepared for the classes. Question, why are you sitting? Why are you passive? They will say, what the hell with you? Who are you? They won't ask you, but they will think within themselves. Who are you? Definitely. And then last point is that intentionally build the relationships. What does that mean? Especially today's young generation, they are very good friends among themselves. I saw that in my 30 years of teaching. First 10 years, second 10 years, third 10 years. In the first 10 years, we were like a family. Second 10 years, students will consult us for jobs, whether to go and join this company, this organization and all that. Last 10 years, 2007 to 2017, I would say, I was so surprised. Students never used to come to ask us, no, sir, where can we apply? Do you know anyone? No, all peers only. Where to go for a job, whether to continue in the job, everything decided only by friends. Okay, so I could see the dynamics of changes among students in the last 30 years. I used to study them in that way. But however, staff who are intentionally building relationship with the students, not only in the class, outside friends, talking to them, these people, students come back and ask them their opinion. This is what I wanted to tell. I have talked about building trust. That means being trustworthy to others. Others refer to, I gave examples of students, your own colleagues, and the management. I think I will stop sharing.
In Nagaland, students very much fond of culture and their own tradition.
Yeah.
But when the matter comes, as you say, the relationship and things, and we were looking for a placement to go out of the state, looking for the adopting other culture, adapting to their work culture in other state. But always our students find difficult. And please enlighten to our staff where they can also motivate the students to take up the job or adopt the other culture. Maybe it's out of the topic.
Yeah.
I request you to enlighten our staff members.
Yeah.
Where they can, I always say to our students, if you want to spread your culture, please go to the other state, other country and tell I am from Nagaland, my culture is rich, but not staying inside. Please enlighten us, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, first of all. for telling me that this is out of syllabus question. Okay. Yeah. I talked about trusting and being trustworthy, but your question has the link to what I said. For example, no, if our faculty members are trustworthy, then only students will take their ideas actually. So what you asked is an extension of what I talked about being trustworthy. Okay. For example, our faculty members have to be credible. They have to be reliable. They must have good interpersonal skills. They need not be too much of very selfish. Then if they say to students, they will listen. But what to say to the students? I have been associated with the Northeast for a very long time. Even year before last year, I was invited by a university. Just now, I'm not able to get the name, for a 2-day workshop in Guwahati. Okay, university in Guwahati. So extensively have traveled all the 7 states, sorry, except Arunachal Pradesh. I have been to all the 6 states of Northeast few times at least. Know their culture. Their culture is very strong and rich in their own traditions, and it is not easy for them to come and adapt to, because you know why I talk so freely. I've been teaching for 30 years in MSW department in Sacred Heart College, Tirupattur. All those 30 years, we had at least 5 students from Northeast. Not even a single year, we didn't have a student. So I am associated with at least 30 into 5, 150 students from Northeast. Sometimes it is even 7 or 8 from Northeast on a regular basis. And I know them very well. I have been even good. A lot of people are good friends of mine. You have to convince them, because they give a lot of importance to relationship and affection, and not much to money, promotion, job status, and those type of things. And that is one reason that holds them here within the state. So you have to tell them, on one level, today the world is so small that they can always come back to their places. At the same time, when they reach out and then mingle with the others, they learn new culture, and also there is a little bit of economic prosperity which they can share with the underprivileged other family members in our own area. This is how I think we can talk to them. And even when they come to our own place, I have seen them always within their group, you know, that is always will be there. That is a plus point. That is the cultural identity of a place which we need to respect, first of all, and then try to tell them how to retain that cultural identity, and then also to get exposed to other culture. Work somewhere outside, come back to your place, bring that other culture values, competencies, and this cross-cultural exchange, you know, that will be very useful. I think that's how we can talk to our students. But before talking to that, the students will know by the trust equation, your C plus R plus I divided by S. I think your question is very good. I'm able to link along with what I presented. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think we have another 5 minutes.
So there is one more question in chat box.
I saw it. Yeah. What is, yeah, I'll open the chat box. Yeah, you can put it in chat box, definitely. Not
Sir,
necessary.
Please once again clarify the difference between credibility and reliability from Department of James.
Okay, very simple. See, credibility is what you speak in front of one person and what you speak behind the person. You understand? When someone comes and tells me, I say, you are very nice, you are very committed, you are the best talent for the university. And after the person goes, he says, this bloody fellow, I tell you, he's a problem creator. I just wanted to please him, so I'm just talking like that. You are not a credible person. Instead, if you are a credible person, you tell him, you are good, these are the areas you are good, but these are the areas you have to improve. And that's actually creating a lot of friction. Shall I help you? Something like that. So, credible person always tells the same thing in front and at the back. Am I clear? This is different from reliability. Reliability is you promise that you will do this work. And then you said, no, I will send you this document by 8 o'clock tonight. And then you are waiting for me to send the document by 8 o'clock tonight. I am not sent. So you wait till 8:15, no idea. You send a message, I'm not replying. You call me by 8:30, my phone is switched off. Now I am seeing this culture a lot in today. I mean, like switching off, that's all. And ultimately they'll say, sorry, there was no network, that's why. This is what is called as a reliability. When you promise something, promise what you can do. But once you have promised, you should fulfill, even if it is going to cause you inconvenience. Not all are like that. Some people talk very sweetly, but when it comes to actual work, they are not able to deliver it. So they backtrack, or sometimes they switch off. That's all. This is an unreliable person. The difference between credibility and reliability is very, very clear, 100%. I think I have explained it this way. Am I right? Thank you. What is effective trustworthiness? Just to take from the slide I presented, because I normally don't want to go beyond our time itself is only 1.5 hours to 2 hours. That's all. See, be credible. Speak in front what you speak at the back. Be reliable. When you promise, fulfill that, and try to maintain a lot of good relationship with the others. That is what is trustworthiness for me. And try to tone down your selfishness. I'm using the word, though the professional word is self-orientation. Everyone wants to come up in life, in career. Everyone wants position, promotion, and all that. I agree. Okay, but we don't be too mad after that. Don't work only for that. I think that is not meant for a teaching profession. I think this is also to serve the people, serve the students. There is a lot more joy in that, actually, I have seen. In my 30 years, I have seen so many people in top positions going unhappy after retirement. And people are not in that position, but they have still fond memories because they have been meaningful to others in their life. Not bothered about the positions and all those lousy things. But whatever position given to them, they have been so attached, meaningful to students and others. What is more important in life? That is what is trustworthiness for me. Okay. Yeah, I'm speaking from my own experience. Okay. I'm just quoting Professor Green's equation, but what I speak is what I have lived for 30 years. And it may be right or wrong. I leave it to you, but this is what my opinion. Third question, I think with that we will go to time management, and then again we will go for questions. Okay, thanks for it. I believe that credibility and rapport building are determinant of academic socialization. May I know what could be your view? Yeah, that's what I'm telling. I believe that credibility and intimacy, that is what you are referring as rapport building, are the determinants of academic socialization. Yes, I agree with you. So that is my view. I have repeated a lot on that, and so I don't want to spend too much time. Thank you, all these people. And I'm now going to switch over to the next area of time management. And there again, I'm going to present the time management quadrant of Stephen Covey. You know the very famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. No. And I have taken the quadrant of Stephen Covey to talk to you. That's all. This is not mine. And this is the quadrant of Stephen Covey from the famous book. And once again, when I finish, if there are any questions, I think we should go ahead. Let me open my... If there is any problem in slide sharing, kindly remind me so that I will correct it. Okay, interaction is over. I'm going to time management, and this is the quadrant used by Stephen Covey. Are you able to see the quadrant?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. So
Yes.
it's like a window, and on top you see urgent, not urgent. Okay, that is on the horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, which you call y-axis maybe, it is put important, not important. So you can have 4 quadrants. The quadrant 1 is urgent and important. Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but important. Okay. Quadrant 3 is, sorry, urgent, but not important. And quadrant 4 is naturally not urgent and not important. I think this is the time quadrant used by everyone, and Stephen Covey, it's not his own original idea. He has taken the same quadrant, but he has given some beautiful explanations. No, that is his contribution. What is that? I like it actually. Quadrant 1, he calls it as quadrant of necessity. That means what? We have to do it. When you go to the college at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, I don't know what is your, opening time. Suddenly there will be someone is going for a strike or this and that, someone didn't turn up. I mean, emergency things. Actually, you should walk into first hour class, but now HOD is calling you for a meeting. Stop everything, all of you please come. Or the principal or registrar is, or vice chancellor or chancellor is calling, stop, all HODs, please come. Okay, why? There is an issue or some communication has come from government or something, which we didn't foresee yesterday, but suddenly it has come up. So this is what is called as quadrant of necessity. So many times in a day, sometimes this type of crisis or problems come, and so it disturbs our normal rhythm. We have to spend time on that. We never planned a time for that, but that actually comes in. What are they? Last minute changes in the timetable, some function is coming, or sudden requirements from government or even from university or from whoever may be, or some major disciplinary issues from students, or some deadline missed activities by ourselves. We should have sent the marks to controller by yesterday evening. We forgot or whatever maybe. Okay, no network, whatever maybe. So now we have to send it by morning 10 o'clock. Okay, this is what is called as quadrant of necessity. So, yeah, this is very important. Without seeing the quadrant, you won't be able to understand what I say. So this is it, see this quadrant 1 where you can see the cursor is, this is called a quadrant of necessity. I have already explained. There will be always last minute changes, sudden requirements from management, major disciplinary issues from students, unexpected, or you would have missed some deadlines. So always try to address that. Some people escape from that. No. Face it and address it. And that is why we call it as a quadrant of necessity. The task is important and the task is urgent. Don't give excuses. Can I do it in the evening? I think you will lose something. No. Okay. So better do it. Then Stephen Covey says, but don't be doing only always those type of things. There should be time allotted for second quadrant, which is important, but not urgent. What about that? Like, updating oneself in subject knowledge by publishing papers or by preparing class subjects on a very regular basis, going to library, reading some books, downloading a lot of information in Google. Now there is nothing you can't get from Google. Okay, and maybe registering for PhD, taking role in management. Okay, these are all what is called, it's not urgent, but they are long-term things. This is why he is calling it as a quadrant of quality. I like the word. This is the contribution of Stephen Covey. That means what? After 10 years or after 30 years, when you retire, what is going to be in your CV? You will have those things in your CV if you have worked systematically over 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, 25-year, 30-year period. They are not going to just like that. You have thought, this is very, I should finish my PhD. No, not enough. If I finish my PhD, I should get guideship. I should have guided scholars. I should have taken up some consultancy. I should have published papers. I should have gone to some innovation of teaching methods like case teaching rather than this boring lecturing, always lecturing and telling students are not interested. Who will be interested? Okay, so this is what is meant by quadrant of quality in my teaching, in my evaluation, in my academic research contributions and all that. Am I really updating myself? Okay, so he says, no, since this is the quadrant of quality, focus. That means if you come and work for 8 hours, at least 6 hours should be here. 1 hour should be for emergencies. And there is left 1 hour is left. What is that? I like this beautiful word, quadrant of deception. Lovely. You know, what does that mean? Some people will be very busy in the university. In my case, in my college. They'll be always busy. They'll be here. Another half an hour, they'll be there. Another 10 minutes, they're here. There. But go through your CV after 10 years, nothing done. Why? They are like a rolling stone. That's all. They've been busy doing routine things. They have never done important quality things, actually. Okay. When someone asks some help, they are so happy to do without knowing why they should do their other's job. Let them do their job. Let me do my job. They don't have assertiveness to communicate, first of all. Anything you say, yes, sir. Yes, sister. Yes, father. They know only yes. Okay. And everyone is also very happy with them. And they are also very happy with it themselves. But why Stephen Covey calls it as quadrant of deception? You know why? They are doing urgent work. That means urgent work of others. Because when others approach you, they will say, please, 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 yeah, can you do it immediately? Oh, yeah. Without knowing what I should do in quadrant 2, I am not doing, updating myself, upgrading myself, working for my PhD, nothing. Someone, some favor, I am so happy to do, because we are people pleasers, actually. We want to please or want to get the good name from others. So everything we do, we are actually deceiving ourselves that we are very hardworking, we are very busy. But actually, we are busy and hardworking on unimportant things, which Stephen Covey calls it as quadrant of deception. We are actually deceiving that we are very busy, actually doing some jobs for others, not for ourselves, or jobs of lesser quality, not of greater quality. That is why examples are spending too much time on reports, formatting, okay, font size. I have worked under some people, I used to get really irritated. They'll say, what is this font? So for me, my nature has always been the stuff. Okay, presentation, there are other people to do. As an associate professor, my job is not to spend and waste time on that. Okay, I'm just telling my personality. I'm not saying I'm right, but this is what I have been always. I have always looked into where my time is spent. Some people I have seen, why this comma is not there? This is adjective should not. I tell you, I have written the report. Please give it to some English professor, correct it, and send. It's not my job. Why? I say that my job as a social work PhD is to interpret and analyze, which English department person cannot do. I'll do my job. If you are so particular about full stop, comma, and all those things, you give it to someone else to format it. My time is for quadrant 2, not for quadrant 3. You can ask questions later on. I am bound to explain. When I say something, I'm answerable. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is what I have learned over 30 years. Okay, that's all. So spending too much time on formatting, reporting, documentation. Sometimes I tell you in my college of 30 years, how many times time has been wasted by meetings and meetings and meetings. The Kumbakonam Bishop Remigius, earlier he was working for Caritas India as the director of Caritas India. So I was in the developmental field before coming to teaching. He used to come and tell us, meeting, eating, cheating. You can ask, this is Bishop Remigius of Kumbakonam Diocese earlier. And then who earlier when he was the director of Caritas India, he used to come and tell us, meeting, eating, cheating. Many a times I have seen meetings purposeless, time consuming, and you know what will happen? Everyone will speak, no one will take the minutes, and ultimately there are some meetings they will take the minutes, but no one will follow it up. Some staff meetings I have seen, after 6 months again the same agenda will come, same heated arguments will come, waste of time. Leaderless, radarless institutions and departments. This is what I have actually seen in my 30 years. Too much of time spent on meetings. And so, you know what we normally do? We spend the time on tasks that are easy to do. I too I'm a culprit of that. Okay. We take up tasks that we like to do. We take up tasks we know to do. I use this phrase. What is that? We always do things which we like. We always do things which we know. We always do things which are easy rather than doing some unpleasant, difficult, very important tasks which are not familiar to us. If you think you are spending time on that, then this is quadrant 3. You are deceiving yourself. Last one is quadrant 4, quadrant of waste. Pointless discussions in staff meetings, chatting, personal phone calls during working hours, social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, everything is there. Gossiping about others. The finer thing, I have seen in my 30 years. Okay. Idling, doing nothing, and extended breaks for lunch or whatever. Okay. Sometimes it is okay. I'm not saying it is totally wrong. Sometimes when we are depressed, when we are upset, when we are bored, we are not machines and robots. I agree with you, and I know I'm also not that. But it shouldn't become a habit. This is what Stephen Covey talks about. Quadrant 1, quadrant of necessity. So manage that. Quadrant 2. Quadrant of quality, so spend more time on that. Quadrant 3, you are deceiving yourself. Quadrant of deception, so use caution. Sometimes we have to do all these things, but not fully. Last one, try to avoid the quadrant of waste. I think I have completed. There are some points. Are you able to see this new slide?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, you can take a screenshot, or you can take a photo, but these points are self-explanatory. I have already explained. Prioritizing tasks and actions. Mostly quadrant 1 and 2. Always better to have a day-to-day list, action list. No, I have a paper which is for my family, for my personal thing, and for my career. I used to maintain an ordinary A4 size paper. I cut into 200. I'm not that much tech savvy to use all these apps in my mobile. So I'm happy with my paper. But action list will be there. Whenever I go to sleep, before that I tick down or I postpone and all that. Try to execute as per plan, but there will be minor deviations. No one will be able to complete the action plan the same day. But success of time management, routine things we can postpone, but the urgent things we have done, important things we have done, spend the time. And gradually, when we become a professional like that, I have seen in myself and others, we will avoid the quadrant 4 time wasters. Okay, time wasters, right? And then working to a deadline and being firm. Say politely no. Okay, don't say very rudely, don't say aggressively. Say I'm sorry, please. These words are always good, I'm sorry, please, can you? Don't say I cannot come, I will not. Those are very rude words actually. People don't like it. Can you kindly excuse me this time? Can you please? I'm repeating, I have been friendly to them, but I have never been part of chit-chatting, gossiping and all that. That is not my cup of tea, that's all. Resist interruptions from others, manage your workload. Find more efficient ways to do things by maybe new skills, upgrading softwares, this and that. Communicating certain things if you cannot finish, at the earliest. So that people are alert. Oh, I think he's not going to give. So some people tell in the last minute. Don't do that, okay? Your report is to be sent to somewhere. You said you will send it by morning. please alert them previous evening itself that, sorry, I did my best, so I won't be able to send. So I think by 12 noon, I will try. That is actually ethical and more responsible than switching off phones actually. And then try to identify your time wasters and avoid them ruthlessly. I have stopped sharing. We shall go for some 10 minutes interaction. And the last area, I'm not going to talk much on that. Just some questions we have. For example, on teaching, learning, governance and academic research, I don't have big slides. These are the two things I really wanted to talk to you. They have given me time from 2:30 to 4:30, but I should finish much before that. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I have gone through all your chats, and it's all about the problem we faced. I think we have solved it. Now I'll be very happy with this, answering questions on time management.
Sir,
Yeah.
since everybody is keeping it silent, I just ask a related same question. There is some group of people who is habitualized with the procrastination.
Yeah.
Can you please enlighten us how to overcome that problem? Because it is a real problem for some people.
Yeah.
Maybe they are in line with, okay, important, but we can, it is not priority.
Yeah.
So they are just procrastinating. Please enlighten us where many can overcome with the real problem is many young and teachers and everybody.
Yeah. Very brilliant question. Actually, this is the $1 million question in time management. Actually,
Thank you, sir.
lot of people like to do PhD. They like to publish paper. They like to write an article in the university annual magazine or something. This is what we call as wishing, dreaming, liking, and all that. But when it comes to start doing, they'll say, yeah, I think I will start from tonight, tomorrow, and then that tonight to tomorrow will never come actually. This is what we mean by procrastination. What experts say, there is no action plan should be without a deadline. When you see, you have to solve this problem by this. Imagine, I want to publish a paper in a journal. That is an action plan. So break it down into smaller tasks. Find a suitable journal of your caliber. Okay. Don't think of Scopus and Web of Science. Maybe a UGC care list journal or even a paid journal. Nothing wrong to start with. Okay. Or any refereed journals or peer-reviewed journals. Identify few journals. Identify a topic. And put a deadline for this. When am I going to identify journals? When am I going to identify a topic? When am I going to collect base materials from books or from journals, library or internet? Likewise, when you put a big goal into actions, that is one way of, then we will know which one to do first, which one to do second. That first step is clear. Then put a deadline by which you have to do. I have to identify the journal to which I am going to send my paper by 10 days time. You have put the deadline. I am going to identify a topic by a week's time. Okay, that deadline is put. Once you have putting action plans, which are very practical steps, which are built one on the other, and then the deadline, then there is a third column. Okay, what are the obstacles? Obstacles are two. One is internal, another one is external. Internal means I am not focused. I always dream, but I am not willing to put the hard work for that. That is my nature. So you please mention that. You write down that is my internal obstacle. What are the external obstacles? Department is giving too much of job. Go and get admission. Talk to the parents to bring children for, do placement. Arrange for internship. see, there are too much of things which management is also pumping on me. So I must understand what are the internal obstacles and what are the external obstacles and what are the actions I'm going to take and what are the deadlines. Once I have it with me, I review it every day. Before going to bed, it's better, people who have the habit of procrastination, just to see the list and see whether they have achieved. If they have not achieved, what they should do? They should not put down themselves. I am useless. I think I am not good for this. I am not going to change. These are all very negative things. Why? Behavior cannot be changed radically. Behaviors can be changed incrementally. That is what we say. Only at least writing down and a deadline I have put, and at least I have seen that, no, that itself, give a pat for yourself. You are improving. I am improving. Okay. And then the last point I would say is, you must have some close friends. That is why I talked about the trustworthiness, intimacy. One or two. Talk to them. My problem is procrastination. I am working on that. This is the method I am following. I am sharing with you. You please ask me whether I have identified a list of journals. You please ask me after a week whether I have something like that. Lot of psychologists say, nowadays our talking to others, our friends is, either gossiping about the third person. Am I right? He has bought a bike. What's the problem with you? Let him buy a bike or a car, or let him get married or not, or whatever. What is your problem? So our relationship is now, we will never talk about you and me. What is your problem? What is my problem? Where do you want to grow? Where do I want to grow? Between friends, when they meet, the discussion is not on that. It is always on the third person. This person is having an affair. This person, all nonsense. I would just use the word, This person is having. This is what psychologists today are calling as high-buy relationship. Relationship is no more intimate, no more in-depth. It is all high-buy, high-five or high-buy. Instead, make use of the relationships for this. This is my problem. I want to overcome procrastination. These are my action steps. Please, what is your issue? I think this is my answer system. I think.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think I saw a few more questions on the chat box.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, yes.
May I have the opportunity to ask a question?
Yeah.
You have said about intimacy.
Yeah.
And when we talk about intimacy, we also understand that there's a thin line that divides what is appropriate and what is not appropriate between teachers and students. I wanted idea from you regarding an issue where a teacher may talk with the students and either intentionally or unintentionally may share the problems that the teacher is facing vis-a-vis the administration or the management. That means in the classroom, a teacher is sharing a problem, but in the sharing of the problem, whether it's unwittingly or knowingly, she's sharing the problems that the department may be having with the management or with the administration, and so and so and so forth. Now, I believe that comes under also another term called as professional ethics. And I've come across a lot of such issues or cases in the past. Just wanted to know, sir, like how should we deal with such a scenario where we see a teacher either influencing the students or maybe sharing with the students something which actually is not fit for the children's maturity at that age?
Anyway, I got it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. See, how I would answer this question is, imagine I am the head of the department and one of the faculty member in my, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
One of the faculty member in my department is going for what is called as a non-professional relationship. We use the word work professional working relationship. That is the term we use with the students and even with the colleagues also. What does that mean? The relationship is very intimate in the sense, very close, but it is professional and it is working relationship. What does that mean? I mean, there is a difference between the way I will relate with my mother, my wife, my daughter, or my son, compared to what I will do in the campus. I'm very happy to talk to them, relate with them, and all that. Okay, but that is a professional relationship. That is a working relationship, and not much of emotional attachment. Why he or she is not talking to me? You are already into trouble. You have lost your balance. Why he or she is talking to another faculty? I think you are getting into a lot of emotional rut. That is a word I use. Emotional rut. Okay. What you can do is the question asked by the faculty. If I am the HOD, definitely things will come to me. Why things will come to me? Because I have good relationship with the students and other faculty members. Sometimes if I am building a vacuum between me and other people, nothing will come to me. Okay, it will first go to the registrar or principal, and then they will ask me. That means I am very poor in my leadership actually. If I am good, I know the problems in the ground because I am in touch with the people. So what will I do? I will not scold. I will not make a politics out of it. I will not go on to complain. These are all, I would tell you, insecure people do. Okay, insecure people do. Leaders never do that. They take it as an opportunity to call the faculty, sorry, and they explain what data you got, and then ask the faculty, what is your version? Sometimes, there could be some gossipers who would have spoiled her name or his name or whatever may be. Okay. Always don't take everything for granted and don't believe unless you verify in this situation. I will get the version of the other person also. And then I will talk in this way, like, this is not going to help you in your career. Neither it is going to help the department also. I give you some opportunities, try to correct yourself. I am not going to, while I am supporting you, I am not going to tolerate the same incident again. That I will be definitely making it very clear. And just to keep you informed, this matter I will pass on to Chancellor or Registrar, not as a complaint, but as a HOD I have to appraise the management. And I will also tell them that I have talked to you, I have supported you, I have guided you, and I have also cautioned you. I think this is what I will do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes, I think there are some messages. I forgot to bring my flask. I brought the flask, but there is no water, and so I think I have some problem with my throat. I'll read the question. This is the HOD CMS. Is there any chances of becoming an activity which is under quadrant of deception into quadrant of quality to another person or another profession when group work? Beautiful question. Fantastic. I think I appreciate you for the question. Unless you have understood, you cannot ask this in-depth question. Okay. Possible. And that question has got lot of depth and meaning. That means, see, we are not individuals. We are working for the department. Sometimes I may have to do certain work, which for me is a quadrant of deception. It's a routine work where my time is wasted. But for the department, this is actually quadrant 2. What will you do? Wonderful question. Very rarely we come across these quality questions. In that case, we have to take a call and say, should it be done immediately and how much time are you going to give me? Number one. If I am the person, I will only ask that. And if they say, no, please, immediately, I will say, yeah, I am doing it. I will put my work behind and then I will do. But you know what I will do? I will say, let this be the last time. I will not do it in future. In future, please alert me and give me some time well before, so that my work is also not a disturb. Why I am repeating this point is, I have seen in my career a lot of people, good people, but very poor in time management. They will suddenly think of something and they say, sorry. No, that is not, you are not helping them in the long run if you keep on doing it. Answer is simple. See if it is the department's quadrant 2, do it. And you can postpone your work. That is a routine work for you, but it is a quadrant 2 for department. Don't be doing it every day. Try to alert the people, train them to do it by themselves, or alert you at least some time before. I think this is my answer. Next question. Can you please explain more on thinking out of the box, just to not remain in routine work? The word thinking out of the box and all that, that simply means be innovative. That's all. Okay. So this thinking out of the box or being innovative will come under quadrant 2. How? Quadrant 2 is growing in our job. For example, I am used to only to lecture method. And now management is giving me each class fitted with the LCD projector. Okay. So instead of using a PPT, I can use a video clipping. Okay. PPT, everyone can be using. But since there is a LCD projector, I can go for a video clipping. I can link the students to an online YouTube, which is relevant to the particular subject. Or I can go for case teaching. This is what is called as innovation. Going out of the box, and that will come under quadrant 2. That is my answer. Okay, then next question. How far is time management possible in the present context of online teaching? Earlier, it was possible to separate one's professional life from one's personal obligations. How can we find a balance now when teachers are expected to be available and responsible around the clock? I don't know. I have not. I'm also a consultant to an MBA institution in Chennai for 10 days. I don't think an institution should expect faculty members to work around the clock. That is something problem with the management, actually. They have to address it. That is my answer. A faculty member is responsible for 8 hours. And on emergencies, definitely when there is an emergency, we as a profession, because I was a government staff, and so I have signed when I joined, I'm available for 24 hours throughout the year. Yeah, that is true. But my management has never disturbed me 24 hours. Okay. It is taken in good spirit. Okay. When you are having normal days, how will you structure your time? Using time management is what I tell people. Sometimes, when you are online, classes are already, normally it won't be more than 4 or 5 hours in a day. Other than that, there will be again correcting the papers, sending the marks and all that. Altogether, it should come for 8 hours. Other than that, I don't think there should be an issue. The balance, work-life balance, that is in your hands. Some people work very smart, very talented, and they finish their work very fast. Some people know, since they are sitting at home, they'll be playing, and they'll be going out for shopping, and they'll be coming and doing. When work gets split by this type of things, what in time management we say, when you want to correct some 10 papers, you close the door and correct it. At one shot, you will finish it. But you go for shopping sometime, you talk to your daughter or son for some time, you help them in online classes sometime, and then come back to correct paper. We say that takes more time because you have to again warm up to the task. Okay, that is very difficult. So you must look into your own professional way of how do you assign your tasks and do your tasks. And if it is beyond the schedules and all that, you must have the assertiveness to tell people that I am doing this. I have seen one culture in the management, okay. That is, they will give more work to people who work, and they will not give work to people who don't work. I don't know. I can generalize that. but I have seen it in few institutions. Okay, because when they give work to someone whom don't do, then they think, why should we give him? This person is good, so let him give. So he will do. Then another work. I think you should sometimes tell that if you want quality from me, I will do this, but try to find someone else for other things. That is based on, again, trust, intimacy with the management. They should know that, yeah, this person also has got limitation. Okay. And this person is very reliable and credible, and he is helping, but beyond this, he cannot do. I think we should find someone else. How they will know unless you are going to tell? If you are going to say yes to everything, I think that problem. I don't think I have understood the question correctly, but whatever I have understood, I have, from that understanding, I have answered this. It is partly your role is also there, not to say yes to everything to maintain work-life balance. Okay. Yeah. Prioritizing is the key to efficiency, but how do I make it part of my work culture? How normally we can do, as a teacher, what are our important things? Teaching innovatively, correcting without biases on time, then academic research wise, PhD and all, this is how we have to prioritize. So how do I make it part of my work culture? Morning when you get up, morning when you get up, take a piece of paper and write down what are all the things to be done for that day. And once you write it down, I do it actually. I put number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Night when I go to bed, I see. Mostly I would have finished only 4 or 5. But the 4 or 5 would be, how I would have put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 based on the important and urgent. That will be 1, 2. It has become part of me because I talk all these things. And the important things will be 3, 4, 5. And 6, 7, 8 and all will be routine things. Sometimes I miss it. I take it to next day. But if you have it as a habit, your brain becomes so habitual. When some tasks comes, you don't need to then write it down and all that. It can automatically see it as whether it is a top priority thing. Thanks for that wonderful question. I think I value this question very much actually. This is the answer to time management. This single question on prioritizing and how can I make it as my work culture? That's a wonderful question actually. Please explain once again how quadrant 1 can be managed without affecting quadrant 2. I think very brilliant questions are coming one after the other. Why I am saying this, many sessions I have not seen some of these questions. The excellence of the question I am able to see. Here you can sometimes delegate. Okay. Some people have the habit. I only can do it. I only can write it. I only can take the class. I only can see this I problem works the other way. When an emergency comes, you call for a meeting, find out, and if it is very critical, then you should be there. If it is not critical, but it is only urgent, then you find the appropriate people and tell them, see, this is the plan, kindly execute and update me. And you keep just over phone monitoring how it is done actually. When you have developed this monitoring culture, people know that this guy, once he gives a task, he will follow it up. He will not sleep. Yeah, did I tell you? Yeah. They will understand who you are actually, what type of leader you are. And don't do that. If you can practice delegation, monitoring, team working, consulting, I think we can reduce time in quadrant 1, which is urgent and important, and take that time for quadrant 2. Lot of quality leaders spend more time for quadrant 2. You know why? The question asked by sister on procrastination. In time management, we say, when we postpone an important but not urgent, that is quadrant 2 work, it becomes quadrant 1. You understand? When you postpone an important work, it becomes urgent and important. Okay. So try to take it at the quadrant 2 itself. That is one way of not having a lot of quadrant 1. But if quadrant 1s come often, maybe you have not trained your staff well. They are not skilled enough. You are doing everything, one-man show. everything they depend on you. Any decision only you can take. I think you need to decentralize your leadership and administration capabilities. I think this is my answer. Okay, yeah. It was asked by HOD, not me. Thank you for acknowledging. Great. Last question. Please explain the librarian and student relationship faced by problems in a guidance. I don't understand the question. What do you mean by librarian-student relationship? Faced by problems, any guidance? Okay, the way I have understood, I won't be able to answer this question much because I have never been to in the post of a librarian. Only problem I have seen librarians in my college, I can answer only from that experience, Now things are changing. Digital things have come up in those days, because I was in the restructuring committee of the college. What is a restructuring committee, that is to bring best practices into the college. I was there for 7 years as part of IQAC. We used to say, sometimes people don't go to the library because of library staff itself. Okay, it happened in some places. They have to maintain order. Silence, okay, fine. They have to be very particular about who is taking books and all that. But I have seen a little bit of a policing mentality, mindset and all that. And so people avoid going to library. And today's generation, with the Google, anything is available in Google. Okay, and so, I mean, you understand that I have not understood the question. Okay, that is point very clear. From the way I have understood, this is my answer. Librarians, I think, have to accommodate the changing culture of the students. And I think even your faculty are very young people only. So that's my answer. If I would have understood properly, maybe answer would have been different. Thank you. Right. Yeah. We have only another 10 minutes more. Shall I go to the last part of the slide, which is not as extensive as this? This is where I wanted to focus: building relationship and trust and time management. The last 3 slides are only if we do this properly, where we should improve performance. What do you think? Shall we go through that, or we shall wind up?
No, we'll go through it.
I'll try to be brief so that we can have some questions on that. Okay, right. And again, if there is any problem in sharing, kindly let me know. Are you able to see this time management slide?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not. Okay. Yeah. Interaction is over. So improving performance. Improving performance in teaching learning. No explanation. I'm just reading. Try to update your curriculum. If you are a university, if you have the freedom, try to once in 3 years at least try to update the syllabus. During my 30 years of my teaching experience, the major enemies of syllabus revision will be only teachers. Why? They have to tear down their old yellow color notes and prepare again new notes also. That one problem I have seen. Another problem, when I have mooted the idea of someone taking a new subject, I have seen some funny arguments like, a person teaching the same subject for 30 years is good because he becomes an expert. I have never understood the logic even after my retirement also. I thought these people don't want to really learn new things, they want to really keep hold of the old notes and old knowledge and try to teach it. That's all. That is not actually improving performance. Update the curriculum, take up new subjects, introduce innovations like case teaching, address the slow learners through remedial programs. At the same time, reach out to brilliant students also. Normally, as teachers, we reach out to average and the poor. We never reach out to the brilliant. So sometimes they lose interest in learning also. Then try to involve, participate, or even organize conferences and workshops. At least once in a year, you should be in any organizing. You should reach a level you are invited by the other person as an expert to talk on. your subject domain area. Okay, so this is what is we mean by improving performance in teaching learning. The second one is academic research, publishing papers in proper journals. We call them refereed journals or peer-reviewed journals, whatever may be. UGC has got its own UGC CARE list of journals. Scopus is next level. Web of Science is higher level. So instead of going for paid journals and some local journals, try to give your quality. No, in quality journals. That's one area. It's not by number of papers you are going to be respected. I have published 10 papers. All paid journals are local journals. Okay, no, waste of time actually. Go for UGC CARE list as at least the basic, or at least peer-reviewed journals, and then up and up Scopus, Web of Science, and all that. At least once or twice in a year, look for conferences. Nowadays, a lot of opportunities are available online to present papers. If you are not a PhD, register and get it. And once you get PhD, go and get your research supervisor designation or status by publishing some papers. Each university has got different rules. 1 year after PhD, 2 years, 3 years, and all that. But better get it. Guide scholars. They will remember you. You are contributing to academics division. And sometimes take up sponsored research, ICSSR, UGC, DST. A lot of options are there. Also try to offer consultancy to maybe corporates, may not be much in Northeast, but definitely development organizations are there. Other educational organizations are there. Be recognized as a consultant actually. So that is in the area of academic research. And the last slide is in governance. Governance means taking some role in the management. I very strongly recommend that because that will help you become a leader actually. So like mentoring students, training students in employability skills, training students for placement interviews and preparedness, co-curricular activities, IQAC, administrative position, whatever opportunities that come to you, take it up. And the last point is that try to use your position and network. Your network means your contacts to influence university or government offices for the development of St. Joseph University, your own department, or maybe some individual students, some mark sheet has not come, this and that, or some faculty, PhD approval has not come, you know the registrar, something like that. Nothing wrong in using our position and the network for good. Okay, so these are the three things: improving performance in governance, in academic research, and in teaching learning. And then interaction. Thank you. That's all. Job done. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Any questions on these three roles? And then we will wind up. We will wind up in time.
I don't think there is some questions. Anyway, on my part, I should express that was really very good and very much enlightening, sir. I had taken a lot of insights. There was a lot of insights in teaching and learning. And on behalf of the university, I'm very grateful to you. As from management part, I would request now Professor Charles to express their gratitude.
Thank you, sister, once again for the privilege and the opportunity to express mine and also on behalf of the entire faculty of this university. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Your gems of wisdom which you have collected through these years of experience, I know it's so valuable that there is no amount that we can fix on what you have just shared. And these gems of wisdom and knowledge that you have shared with us, we will treasure it, and not only treasure it, but we will also propagate. We will also share it with our students. So thank you so much, sir, once again, and I wish that you were here in person in our state, in our land, Nagaland.
Yeah.
So, God willing, I hope to see and meet you one day here after all
Yeah.
the situation has calmed down. And I also want to thank the faculties for your positive involvement, participation, for your intelligent questions,
Yeah.
for relevant feedbacks that you have given. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And finally, I would like to thank the administration for VC, also our Chancellor, former Chancellor, who's always keen, who's always looking forward to empower the faculties in terms of knowledge and wisdom. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. From my side, a big thanks to those wonderful people who asked excellent questions. I think that only made this session good. Not because I presented, but the questions were very intelligent and brilliant questions. And I thank all those faculty members who either openly or by chat put the questions. And I do thank the management of St. Joseph University and the initiative I could see taken by the top administration, even in asking questions, to kickstart the process. That was really good. That shows the right leadership, actually. Okay. And I wish all the best to St. Joseph University. This teaching profession, there is no profession equal to this profession. We can make or mar a lot of people, actually. And this is a golden opportunity. And I wish you good health and prosperity, peace of mind, happiness in work, and everything. And I wish the management and the faculty and all the students of the university. Thanks for this opportunity. Thank you. And thank you.
Once again, thank you all. Thank you, Professor, for really enlightening all of us. And thank all the HODs and faculty members. Let's take this as the next step to come forward in our life. Thank you once again.
Yes.
Stay in good health. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Sir, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Antonison. It is Antonison who brought me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
sir.
it's my pleasure, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Shall I take leave then?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Thank you so much, sir.